further legal analysis, we're bringing in federal defense attorney Ronald Chapman II. Ronald, appreciate you being here. Let's jump into this. We see Justice Jackson warning of an existential threat to the rule of law. What does she mean? How big is the fallout from this ruling? And are we about to see a flood of lawsuits in an already clogged system?
Well, I think the reason that Justice Barrett clapped back so hard on Justice Jackson here by saying that she decries a imperial executive by essentially authorizing an imperial court is that if one judge has the ability to change the way that our nation is run, and there are hundreds of judges in the federal judiciary, then we will have conflicting opinions, but the one injunction will stand, meaning that one judge can control the entire nation effectively. Now, the Supreme Court didn't have to get to this issue for hundreds of years because the reality was that judges traditionally confined their opinions to the case at hand. It wasn't the case that nationwide injunctions were regularly granted. But now we live in a day where judges have decided to exceed that authority, and the Supreme Court had to act, and they did so in a very limited way. It's important to note here that this decision is not about birthright or those other fact patterns. And Justice Sotomayor sort of got that confused when she was writing her dissent. This is a very tailored opinion.
Are we looking at a seismic shift in presidential power as a result, though? And explain why or why not this ruling essentially hands a blank check to the executive branch and ties the hands of the lower court to push back.
Certainly, this power could be abused. The reality is that if the executive issues an executive order that is very broad or perhaps unconstitutional, one district judge will not be able to stop it. However, this could be appealed to a circuit court or even to the Supreme Court, and it could be halted. Or there are other ways, as was mentioned earlier, that you can get nationwide relief. Those ways are a little bit more difficult, but in reality, nationwide relief should be something that is relatively difficult to get and that you have to have a mass or a class action to attempt to pursue. So I think those avenues may be opened up a little bit and a little easier, and I think that power will be reined in over time.
Does this ruling basically rewrite how we understand checks and balances for now? Are we entering a new era of presidential power? And if so, what should Americans be watching for in this administration or in the future when the pendulum inevitably swings the other way?
One may argue that this would be unchecked presidential power, but the reality is that this does strengthen the executive by making it harder to challenge, but it does so for both parties, regardless of who's the executive. So the reality is checks and balances will play out the way that they're supposed to. But that means that Congress can now act to stop an unconstitutional executive order, or a class action can be filed, or the Supreme Court or a circuit court can take care of it. Now, this is the beauty of our system. When something changes, usually there is other changes throughout our system to make sure that everything is kept in balance. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's exactly what will happen as a result of this order.
Yeah, what other changes are you anticipating?
Well, I'm imagining that now the executive action will be much easier to sign with little fear that it will be considered unconstitutional by a judge. But by that same note, there's also a lot more responsibility in ensuring that these executive actions are constitutional, because the Supreme Court very well could take those issues up at any time, or there could be other lawsuits. So I would expect those changes to come very soon.
Ronald Chapman, appreciate the analysis and time tonight. Thank you.